Yo, what's good everybody? This is Westend. If you don't know me, I have had releases on labels like Dirty Bird, Repopulate Mars, Solo Toco, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make a track in 1 hour. So we're going to do start to finish, full track, 1 hour. I know you guys requested this, so here it is, and this is my first time doing something like this, so let me know if this is helpful, and if it is, please give this video a like and subscribe. Peace. Alright, so let's make a track with an hour on the clock. So I use a template to produce. It just makes things a lot easier. I have all my groups, all my channels labeled of instruments that I'm going to use, and I put effects on the group just to save me time. So, first thing I'm going to do is let's get a kick drum out. So I have this kick I wanted to use. Generally when I'm looking for a kick, I'm looking for one that has a good sub that's really punchy, and if it's missing some top end, I can always kind of splice that together with some other samples, but I'm just looking for a good punch. So this one, pretty nice, and let's shape this a little bit. So it's a little bit long right now. Generally, I like to have my kick kind of end at this halfway point before the next kick, so, maybe something like this, maybe a little shorter. Yeah, let's reconsolidate that. Consolidate. Tempo. Let's do 126. Whoops. 126. All right. And let's see what key this kick is in. So I use this plugin called Span. It's totally free. Definitely get this. And I'll switch it to high res mode. And I'll kind of just see where this peak is. So it's looking like G sharp. So just for the sake of time, let's write this track in G sharp. Everything I look for is going to be in G sharp. All right, so, let's do the next sound. Let's get a little just beat going. Let's do a clap. So I have my drum samples folder. This is Wave Alchemy. They have really good drums. I'm just going to type in clap here. They have vinyl drums, which have like a vinyl crackle, so that may be cool. Let's try that. It's pretty nice. Simple beat. And this clap is way too long. Generally, like for my tracks, I want my drums to be short and punchy, so I'm just gonna fade this down. No tail there, we like that. Let's stack that out. So now we got, cool, let's bring the volume down on this. I mix as I go, so every time I add in a new instrument, or a new sound, I'm gonna be like trying to set the level generally of where I want it. Like that. And let's say we wanted to add a little bit more character to this clap, we could add like another sample, like maybe I go back to tape drums and I look for a clap. Let's see, like a synthetic. Like that has like some cool texture to it, a little bit different than the original sound. Let's fade this so it kind of matches this one. So that's without it. You can see it adds a little bit of like that brightness from those high frequencies, but I brought the volume low enough where you can't really tell it's two samples. It kind of just sounds like one. So let's consolidate that. I like to do this layering in the beginning of the writing process, so I don't have to go back later and fix it. Let's do a hat. So I have this group for my main hat. This is like that offbeat 8th note hat that you hear pretty much in every house track. So let's see what samples I want to use. Just gonna type in hat here. Let's get like an open hat. That one's pretty nice. So same thing, we're just gonna lay that down, I think right here. Cool, so I'm gonna do a little trick sometimes I do. I'm going to have the first hat here be a little bit shorter and the second one longer. So together, there's a little bit of a groove in there. The first is a little shorter, the second's longer. I don't know, subtle little details like this definitely help to make your track more interesting. So I like that. And then I'm listening to the sample and I'm like, okay, it sounds good, but like, what is it missing? So if we just solo this. Has a lot of body, it has that like ch sound, but it doesn't really have like a sharp transient, and if I zoom in you can kind of see that like the volume's like fading up a little bit. So maybe I'm going to look for a sample that's a little bit more attack at the beginning, and that's going to help that drum be a little bit punchier. So see, I have this transient layer, and usually closed hi-hats have that. Like this, for example. If we lay that down, you can kind of see it doesn't really fade as much. It's a little bit stronger in the beginning, so that's going to really help to give this main hat a little bit more body. So you can see, like, if I have a 2 with it on and then 2 off, you'll kind of see that the energy dies a little bit after. Cool, so let's keep that. All right, so now we have like just a simple beat, and I'm gonna start working on a bass line. So close this, let's go to my bass line channel. This is like an empty MIDI track. And just for the sake of time, I'm gonna use a little bit of a tool to help me. So I have this Easy Tech bass line. So basically what this is a pre-made instrument rack with this Max for Live plugin called Sting 64. It kind of just generates a MIDI pattern for you that matches like an acid type track. You can change a bunch of parameters here. We'll go into that. Then I have this link to a Sylenth patch. So this is just like a Moog bass, like a simple fat kind of bass sound. I have an EQ, so I'm cutting out all of the high frequencies here. Generally for like the sound that I like to have the bass be pretty subby and low, so I don't really want too much highs, but the good thing is that I can kind of automate this to open later, and that'll help me add some variation to the track. And then I have this totally in mono. I may turn that off, and I just have a tuner so I can see what notes are there. So if I just play this, I mean, it's kind of like cheating, you know, it's too easy. Let's play with the density. So I kind of want like a more dense pattern, just, I don't know, that's what I'm feeling right now, so I'll keep that up there, and then if I hit this smiley face, it'll reset. Ooh, yeah, this is the one. All right, so right now I can't see the MIDI for this, so I'm going to go to a new MIDI track here. And let's change the input to this to bass 1. So basically we're going to record the MIDI from this channel into here. So let's hit record there, record this. That's pretty much all we need. Now we can take this MIDI, bring it back here. We can turn this guy off because we don't really need him anymore. Cool, and like let's say we want to like play with this a little bit, like it was a little bit slow in this section, so maybe I'll add another note here, like boom, boom, another note there. And let's see what key this is in. So it looks like C sharp is the root note. Yeah, so we'll say that this is in C sharp. So I gotta make sure now that this kick, which was I think G sharp, is in that key, and I can verify that later. But you know, they sound pretty good together, so I'm not gonna change that. And now I'm kind of gonna be looking for sounds in C sharp because so far that's the only melodic part of the track we have. Everything else doesn't really have a tone to it. It's just like kick and clap. This is the first melodic component, so we're gonna stick to C sharp. All right, cool. So let's kind of build out a loop and just add a bunch of stuff to that loop. And then once I'm happy with that, we'll go to the arrangement. So let's just build the drums and like the groove out a little bit. So, you know, loops are really great for this because someone already put in the time to add a bunch of groove and different sounds to it. And like, you know, if we're making a track an hour, I gotta be quick. So I really like these loops from Blanc, these top loops. All right, so this one's cool, and I'll show you guys a little trick. So if you ever have a loop and you kind of want to change the way it sounds like very quickly, you want to change this to beats mode, keep this on transient preserve, and then change this to this little right arrow, and then as you drag this number down, it's going to get shorter and shorter on the loop. So if I solo this, So you basically have 100 different versions of this loop from 0 to 100 here, and it's a great way to like make it your own sound. So let's bring this down around here. I can hear there's a little bit of bass in this as well, so I'm gonna put an EQ here and just cut out any lows. And maybe I will chop this up. So let's consolidate this. So now you can see everything's much shorter. That's what we did before with that gate trick. So let's say maybe here I'll add another, I'll do that twice. This time let's make this reverse. Kind of sweeps into that next part. So, I'm still using a loop, but I'm kind of chopping it up and making it my own. Let's resave that. If I take it away, there's not really much groove. So that's dope. I fuck with that. Let's add some more drums. So, I have these supplemental hats. These are going to kind of come in every once in a while just to add to the groove a little bit and to keep things interesting. So let's go back to my drum folder. So we'll type in hat. I like this one. So like maybe at the end of every 2 bars, this is going to come in. Maybe here. And then like maybe here we kind of do a different pattern where we have 2 of them, just for a little bit of variation. You always want to try to add some variation and complexity to your track when you can, and it can be pretty simple like this. And let's maybe, I actually don't love that reverse sound that I did, so I'm just going to stick to the original. And let's pan this a little bit. So start thinking about the stereo field. We don't always have to have everything go down the center. We can kind of take some of these percussive one-shots and move them. So I'll move this one to the right, and now I'm probably going to want to balance this out with something on the left. So let's maybe look for a percussion sound. Maybe like a stick. That's pretty dope. Let's add this here. So let's add this to the left. Maybe 12 to the left. Whatever, 13. A little bit louder. All right, cool. We could add some more loops, like maybe, let's look for a shaker loop. Probably have one of these in my folder. A little bit loud. Let's put an EQ on this, make sure there's no bass in the sound. Kind of crowded a little bit with this one, like it's not the cleanest sound, so I'm going to try that gate trick to shorten this up a little bit. Alright, cool. So we'll leave the drums like that for now. Maybe later we'll kind of add some stuff to keep it more interesting. Let's add like a texture sound. So this is going to be like an atmospheric sound that's going to kind of not really move melodically. It's going to stay on one note, and that's going to help to give a little bit of a vibe to the track. Like maybe it's going to be a weird sound, maybe it's going to be a dark sound. It's going to kind of start to help move the track in a direction. So I'm going to open up Splice, and I think we said C# was the key we're looking in. So I'm just going to type in like synth here, and this is all sounds that I've downloaded before. I'm just going to randomly kind of go through it. So like this, for example. Let's take this, put this in the atmosphere. So I don't really like this melodic part where it's kind of moving up and down. I just want to take this initial part and maybe loop that. So now this is kind of like a string that's in the background. It's going to give, you know, a little bit of a darker tone to the track, just kind of help fill out the frequencies that, you know, right now we just have drums and bass, so we kind of need like a synth to fill out some of those middle frequencies. You know, let's add a little bit of sidechain to this. So I use Kickstart, really great plugin. I think it's like 15 bucks. Just makes sidechain super easy. And then let's maybe add a filter to this as well so that we can kind of open this up and close it. So we can automate this later, but I dig that. All right, other sounds, like a vocal. So let's go back to Splice. Let's type in vocal.
Even though I tried to.
That's pretty good. I think we could work with that. So I have my main vocal channel. Here I have this plugin. Don't really worry about this. This is just kind of to brighten the vocal a little bit, but I'll turn this off. We have an EQ, and then I have this vocal rack that I made. So this is parallel processing, meaning that we'll keep an original copy of the signal totally dry with no effects on it, and then we're basically stacking, like, I don't know, 9 different layers, 2 different compressors, a flanger, a slap delay, reverb, 2 different reverbs and 2 different delays here. And what this is going to do is it's going to take that dry vocal from Splice and it's going to give it a ton of effects. It's going to give it body. It's going to give it some width as well, because you can see some of these layers are panned left and right kind of evenly to balance it out. So I'll put this in and then I'll turn this off. You can hear now when I pause the vocal, there's a ton of reverb and delay. That's all from this. All right, cool. So I think we can start arranging a little bit. So let's zoom out. So I'm gonna insert some silence from the beginning. So let's say we want like a 32 bar intro. It's pretty standard for tech house. So let's take like the kick. So the kick will kind of go the whole time. Let's take the claps and hats. Let's keep those going. Maybe this shaker that we added, let's kind of take that out for now. So let's say 16 bars without that. And let's maybe put a EQ on the kick where we're gonna take out all of the low end and we're gonna use this as a parameter. So we're gonna add the low end back in after a certain point, and that's gonna kind of get the energy going, and we can also automate this to add as a fill. So let's automate this device. So let's say it's on for the first 16 bars. And I'm just kind of moving this EQ. I like the 4x curve here because I find that it really helps to cut everything. Where I can just hear the kick, but none of the sub. Right around there. And let's take this atmospheric sound and let's throw this the whole way. Let's do some automation. So we're going to automate this filter and kind of have it go up over time. So right around bar 16, we're going to add in the bass line. So and then instead of adding in the shaker here, since we already added a new element, I'm going to use the shaker after another 8 bars here to kind of progress it more. So, you know, rather than just have it come here and then figure out something else to do here, I'll just have that shaker come in. You know, maybe we can tease the vocal a little bit too. So we have this vocal. Let's put this right before that bass line comes in. Maybe we don't want to use this part. Let's just keep this last little part. And I want some more delay here, so I'm going to put a delay effect separated from this, and we'll kind of keep this only on for this section. So we can turn it off before. And then I want a quarter note delay, so it's going to work with the kick. You know, increase the dry wet. You know, maybe the percussion, I forgot we have this other percussion that can come in there. All right, so that's a quick little intro. You know, we haven't used any effects, but we can go back and add those in later. So let's go to this section right here. So this is going to be like the build-up. So I'm going to, let's say like we want our build-up to be 16 bars. So I'm going to add another 16 bars here. So I'm just going to copy this over into the breakdown, and I definitely don't want any low end here. I kind of want to save that for when the drop's going to happen, so I think the drop's going to be around 49, so let's just turn that EQ back on for this section. You know, let's add this vocal here, and the whole point of this section is like we want to build the energy to the drop, so we want to start to take things away or like slowly move them to kind of build the energy. So the first thing we took away was the low end from the kick. Let's have the vocal here, but instead of just having this repeat itself, I'm going to add a filter, and we're going to slowly filter this up, so you know, you can kind of hear it building and growing. So this bass line, we also want to take away the bass here. So just like we did with this kick, let's put an EQ on our bass group and find that sweet spot where we can hear the bass line but without any of the sub. Right around there. I also forgot to mention before, so I have my sidechain on my group here, and I use this plugin called LFO Tool. So it's just a lot easier than using a compressor in my opinion, and you have a little bit more control. So I generally want the volume of the bass to duck while the kick is playing, and remember when we set that kick, we kind of set it to halfway, so I know that I'm good to let the bass come back in right around this halfway point. Let's fade this a little bit, see how this sounds. Cool, I like that. And then we got to automate this so it matches here. So there will be no bass, but you'll still be able to hear the bass line, if that makes sense. You know, and again, we're trying to grow things here. So I remember I have this EQ. Why don't we automate this frequency cutoff? So it's starting to grow. You can see it's moving now. Even though I tried to connect, even though I tried to connect. Let's do a little bit more to this build up. So, you know, we still haven't used any effects. I don't really want to go to grab any white noise sweeps or anything like that, risers, until I'm happy with all the automation that I already have. So another thing we could automate is these drums. So I have a utility on the drums group. Let's bring down the volume of these drums by, I don't know, 2.5 decibels just for this section. And what this will do is it'll kind of give the vocal a little bit more room to stand out in the mix here, but also it's going to make it so that when the drop comes back in, these drums are going to be 2.5 decibels louder, and it's going to hit a lot harder. So you can see the drums got a little bit quieter. I also have a filter here, so maybe we'll start to kind of slowly take away the high end of the drums and save that high end for the drop. You see it slowly filtering down. Cool, so that definitely sounds good to me. Let's add Let's start thinking about effects. So I kind of want like one big white noise sweep, and I have this group where all of my effects are going to go through a sidechain so that they kind of pump with the kick. I like that effect more than just having it be, you know, a standard sound. I kind of like it to move with the kick in volume. So I'm going to type in sweeps, and I believe I have some that I like to use. Sweeps. So something like this. And let's fade this. So we you know, we want it to gradually come up in volume.
Even though I've tried
and like I want a little gap right here for the vocal to kind of stand, like right before the drop. So I'm gonna have this riser end right around here.
Even though I've tried to
so this is the side chain. It was a little bit too much side chain, so I'm gonna bring down this dry wet.
even though I've tried even though I've tried even though I've tried.
Cool, so that sounds pretty natural to me. One way we can kind of make this sweep a little bit more interesting is if we take this auto pan effect and we automate the rate and the amount. So what this is going to do is we're going to give more of this effect towards the end of it, where it's going to kind of pan left and right, and we're going to automate this rate so that it goes really fast left and right, and it's going to create this like kind of like buzzing sound. And I don't know, I think it's just a cool way to make this a little bit doper, as opposed to this where there's not really much movement. It kind of has that like mosquito sound. So
even though I've tried even though I've tried.
Cool, so that's pretty good. Let's add a reverb and delay to these drums so that they also help with the energy here in the build. So, you know, there's a plugin called Endless Smile that you could use, but if you don't have that or don't want to get it, there is something called Easy Wash. Let me grab this real quick. Easy Wash by this guy Kleph. I think I'll put a link in the description for you guys to download this. It's like a free Ableton audio effect rack, and what it'll do is it'll add like a reverb, a delay, a filter, and it'll just create this kind of like washy sound. It's really good for build-ups. So we can automate this to slowly grow, maybe from the last 8 bars of this build-up.
Even though I've tried even though I've tried even though.
And you know, we'll have the little tail of that effect fill out this pre-drop area. And let's maybe add a snare roll. So snare rolls are great for energy. I'll show you guys how I do my snare rolls. So I'll make a new MIDI track, and let's add a sampler here. Sorry, a simpler, not a sampler. And we're gonna make a pattern. So I kind of know that for a snare roll, I like 16th notes. So I'm gonna bring the velocity up here. This is the volume of the snare. And I'm going to bring the second one down a little bit, and this is going to make the snare roll a little bit more natural, because if someone was actually, you know, doing a snare roll in a drum kit, they wouldn't be hitting every single note the same volume, like no one's a robot. So kind of try to mimic that a little, that human aspect a little bit. Whoops, I copied that wrong. So let's duplicate this out. And let's add in a snare sample. So I'm gonna go back to my drum folder. Let's type in snare, not snare. I like this one. And the good thing about doing this in MIDI is that we can always change the sample if we want to change it. So this is not as fast as I want it. I want it double that speed. So let's do the same thing, but faster. let's put some effects on this. So first effect is going to be an EQ. Generally snares have a lot of low end or bass to them. Whoops. So we want to make sure to cut all of that out. See all that lows? We don't really need that. That's just going to get in the way and kind of muddy up the track. You know, you could do this. There's no right or wrong here. Generally, you know, I wanted this high end to be emphasized, so I'm kind of taking down the mids a little bit to make this louder relative to the mid section. Next effect I'm going to put on is going to be a filter. So instead of having the snare totally open with the frequencies the entire time, it's going to grow. And let's add a little bit of groove to this. So right now everything's like directly on the grid, right on the beat. Let's add some swing. So if we go here to the groove pool, we're going to go to swing. And this is a faster pattern, so I'm going to pick one of these 16th note swings. I think this one's going to be good. And then you commit this so you can kind of see, it's a little hard to see, but some of these notes now aren't directly on the grid. They're a little bit after. If I zoom in, you can see that. Yeah, so this was right on 1.1.2, and now it's a little bit later, and that's going to lead to a little bit more of a jacking, kind of swingy pattern. So I like that. Let's add another filter here. So this is a low pass filter. This is going to be a high pass filter, and we're going to use this to kind of fade this snare roll out.
Even though I've tried.
So you can kind of see it fades out a little bit more naturally. That's going to help your transition so that it's not as sudden when we get to the drop right here. And like let's make this a little bit more interesting. So this last little section right here, you know, maybe I'll make this a different color. And let's have the snare here pitched down. So we're going to open the envelope. We're going to go to MIDI control and pitch bend, and we're going to pitch this down.
Even though
And if I close this filter, you can hear it's going to pitch down. It's just going to add a little bit of complexity to the track as opposed to just leaving it the same pitch the entire time. Cool. So let me consolidate these together again. The last thing I think we can do for this build up is we can add a little bit of a fill right before the drop, just to kind of let the listener know, like, oh, we're about to get into the drop right here. So this is where I'll go to splice and I'll just type in like fill. I don't really care about the key for this because I just need like a drum sound. Let's try this one maybe. And I think I have a drum fill section maybe somewhere, maybe not. I'll just put it in the drum group. Cool, so this is going to be the drop, so we definitely want that bass to come back in for the kick and the bass. We want the drums to have the filter be fully open. So let's take away this pad here, because the pad is gonna make this sound more like an intro. So we don't really need that here. And let's add a synth sound right on this drop, just to get the energy really high at the beginning. So we'll go to our lead synth section. Let's use Serum. That's kind of like my go-to these days, one of them at least. And I'm just going to use a preset. I generally like to use presets and tweak them. I don't really have time to make every single sound from scratch, especially if we're doing a track in an hour. So I'm going to look, this guy Deceiver, these Deceiver packs are pretty good for tech house sounds. Just going to like pick a random one of these. Kind of go through. pretty good. So let's make a MIDI clip here. And, you know, if I don't really know what melody I want to play, I'm just going to start on the root note. So we said we were in C3. Maybe we'll get rid of the vocal here as well and bring that back in later. So let's try to see if we can do something a little bit more interesting than one note. Maybe we'll do triplet notes. I like that. And then, you know, this patch has a lot of delay on it. And reverb. I don't love the delay, but I do like the reverb. And I want to see if I can automate something here. So maybe, let's see, there's no real parameters here. Let's add some voices to this synth. This is going to make it wider. So if it's you see a 1 here, that means it's in mono. If you have a number that's higher than 1, that means you have multiple voices. And we have this detune knob. So let's detune both of these. So I'm going to click that and then see what this sounds like and do the same here for this oscillator. It's a little bit too much detuning. So I like that. Let's make this, you know, this is a drop synth, so we really want it to be big and wide in the mix. So I'm going to use something called the Haas effect, which is basically when you take a signal and you delay it a little bit between the left and right channel, and then our ears perceive that as a really wide sound. So I have this rack that I use, and this is going to be a parallel processing rack, meaning we're going to have the original signal, which doesn't have any effects on it, and then we're going to have one with this Haas effect that's going to be like very wide. We're going to blend those together with this volume knob. Cool, so that's a good way to kind of start off this drop. We're going to probably do a call and response section, so I'm going to have to get a couple other sounds here. Let's go to the drums first. I think, you know, the drums were great for the intro, but for this section we need a little bit bigger drums. So I'm going to go to this hat and I'm going to look for a more bigger open hat that's going to come in. So like maybe like a classic 909 hat. Let's see if we can find one of those. Yeah, that's the one. 909 open. And let's have this guy, let's maybe shorten it up a little bit. Whoops. We can do that same trick where the first hat is a little bit shorter than the second. And I can hear this hat has a lot of like lower frequencies. I don't really want those. So I'm going to use this EQ to maybe brighten up the highs a little bit. Let's make sure we have these guys going. So now we're going to do like an 8-bar call and response. So the beginning of this is going to start with the synth. We're going to need other little like one shots to fill this out. So I'm going to look, I have a bunch of synth sounds I've downloaded over the years. I'm going to look for one that's in C#. Go to all results. Could try this maybe. Whoops, that was the wrong sound. That's cool. If I had more time, I'd probably spend a really long time going through these and finding the exact sounds that fit the vibe I'm going for, but just for the sake of time, we'll go with that. I don't like that. Let's take this, and this says it's in C, but we can always pitch it up one. So let's shorten this up a little bit, and let's pitch this up one semitone. Maybe this doesn't go here. Maybe we can put this on the end here. Actually, I don't love this sound, so sometimes you just gotta, you think it has potential and you try it out and then it doesn't work. Ooh, some acid sounds. That could be cool. That's cool. And let's maybe put a filter on this so that it grows. I like that. All right, cool. So we got a little bit more call and response here. Let's carve out a little fill at the end. So I'm gonna go back to my kick and I'm gonna automate the EQ on. I'm gonna do the same thing with this bass here. And let's automate this bass line so that maybe at the end of the section, it kind of opens up a little bit. And like right here, we can take that fill that we had here and put that in. We accidentally copied the automation from this washout, so. But we can automate this washout so that it kind of adds that washy feeling right before the next section, and that's gonna help add a lot of energy there. So let's copy and paste this over again. So we'll do another 8 bars with the same pattern. But this time we want to add something new because we've kind of progressed 8 bars in the drop. We don't want to just do the same thing over again. So let's maybe try adding in this atmosphere sound that we had and see if that helps. Let's add the vocal maybe right here. And then let's copy this one more time. And this time we're gonna, we already added this pad, so we're gonna have to add something new. So let's maybe add a ride hi-hat. This is generally good to help build the energy in your drops. So we'll go to loops. Let's, it's not a tambourine, but whatever. Let's add a ride. So I'm gonna look for a ride sound. That'll work. And the way I like to do my rides, I think I have a ride somewhere here. Hold on. Maybe not. The ride should follow the pattern of your main hat. So your main hat is coming every 8th note. So we'll kind of take this ride, put that here. Sorry, right here. And then I take this little tail section and I use it to fill out the beginning. And then I loop this and copy and paste this. And that's going to give you that washy ride sound. Let's lower the volume on this. And then the other effect I like to put in my rides is sidechain. I find because it's like the sound is going the entire time, like we never lose the sound. Sidechain just kind of helps to fit it in the mix a little bit better. So let's add Kickstart. And maybe for this fill, instead of doing just 1 bar at the end, let's do 4 bars, or 2 bars, sorry. Same thing on the kick here. And let's maybe use that snare roll that we had before and throw that in. All right, so now we're kind of done with this drop. We can go back into a build-up, or we can do something that I like to call a cooldown section. So we can just take the kick and the bass. And let's maybe add one drum. So I'm gonna add the hats, but I'm not gonna add the clap. And this is just gonna help make this section feel a little bit less like the drop. And the listener will kind of be like, okay, we're going into something new. Let's get rid of these loops actually. So it's just gonna be the main hat. So we're gonna kind of have the vocal rebuild itself here. So this is what that filter's doing. And this would be a good place to maybe put in like an effect sound. So maybe we'll put in a down effect right here. So I'm gonna go to splice. There's like one down effect that I like to use a lot. It's this noise fall. So where are we? We are right here, 73. So let's throw this guy in. So this is going to be our second build up. So let's copy and paste, whoops, the first one that we had. So this section, let's just do a big copy and paste here. And this is, it's generally going to be the same structure, but this time we're going to maybe add a new sound here. So the vocal, I kind of want this time the vocal to be fully open. So instead of having it build in this section, we have it build beforehand, and then it's going to be open. And maybe I'm going to take the snare roll and start it off earlier so you can kind of hear it going the whole time. And over here, let's have this automation on the filter a little bit slower, since I don't really want it to open it up until the end. So you'll hear it kind of in the background. Maybe let's take out the kick from this build up, just to make it a little bit more different than the first time. So instead of having the vocal just loop through like the original loop, let's loop this first part right here. Just to make it, again, different from the first build-up. And then for this pre-build, maybe we kind of loop this last part of the vocal. Let's see if this sounds good. I don't love that, but we gotta try it anyway. So now we can copy and paste our drop. But instead of copying and pasting the first part of the drop here to this section, let's take like the more energetic part, so the last part that we had. And let's copy that over. So we don't need the pad right here, but I do like that it starts off with the rides. That's going to make this a lot more energetic. And maybe I noticed that we have the snare roll here in both builds. Let's take it out of the first one so that that kind of pitch down snare effect that we did only is here for the second one. And I think that's going to make the second build a little bit more interesting. You know, we can do something kind of interesting here where maybe we take away all the drums while that synth is playing and add a little bit of a clap right at the end to kind of tell the listener, hey, we're about to go back to having some drums here. Maybe we can do a little pattern. I still want to maintain kind of a symmetry from each section, so I want the automation on this EQ to kind of match. So even though I copied this section, I'm going to fix that there. I'm going to fix that with the bass line here. And I don't really want the snare roll here as well. We'll save that for later. And then let's take the second part of the drop we did here. Close these. Let's take the second part, add that here. I didn't even realize the loop was longer than I expected. Hold up, let's see. Wow, I cut it in half. So, you know, I turned automation lock on so I don't change any of the automation I did, but I want to use this longer loop because it's a little bit more interesting. So now I'm kind of adding in this vocal in the fills of the drop just to make it a little bit more interesting. So let's keep that going. Or let's at least take this one and add it here. Whoops, there. And let's do the same thing over here. Just so, again, there's symmetry between the drops. And then here we can kind of let that full vocal go. You know, and one thing I'm realizing here is like maybe we can automate this vocal. So I'm going to add the easy wash that I added before to the drums, to the vocal, so that that vocal kind of has that reverby effect. So let's add this. Let's have this automate up, and then I want it to be clean right here. Maybe we can automate it again so that it kind of bleeds into the drum. And then for the last part of the drop, it's going to be the same as this part, but we're going to add that ride back just to kind of close it off. So let's go to find that ride. And let's add him here. And then again, we can maybe do the same trick that we did right here with the snare roll. Sounds like the bass. Yeah, we gotta make sure the bass is there. And I think because I had automation lock, I accidentally copied over the filter. The high pass filter, yeah, so we want to make sure that that's, whoops. Cool, so this will be the outro of the track. So generally for my outros, I just like to do my intro backwards. So I'll take this part of the outro. can keep in a little bit more of the high energy drums that we had from the drop, so let's keep that in. Let's copy this. So we want a 1 minute drop or 1 minute outro. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking away the kick, or the low end from the kick, and the low end from the bass, just for this last 16 bars. This is gonna help any DJ that wants to play your track, like, mix it out with an incoming track. And there we have it. No master on the track yet. I think we can save that for a separate video, but you can see that I don't really need to do any mixing on the track right now, because, I mean, I could do some mixing, but I did a lot of the mixing as I went, so I don't really have to worry, for the most part, about going back and mixing the track. And yeah, let's give it a listen from the start. I'm going to add in the effects right here. We got a new thing coming in. That transition was a little awkward, so let's add this effect right here just to help smooth that out. need to listen to the whole outro, but there you have it, a full track in 1 hour. Again, if this was helpful, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments any other types of videos you would like to see me do, whether it's another one of these or more focused in on a specific technique. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you.